Wednesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock. Time for Sports for CLE. Hope you're having a good day. A little later in the show, we'll talk some Cavs and some Guardians. We begin by talking Browns. We've talked a little bit about this. So these are the salaries of wide receivers 30 years of age or older, and they are 38% of the top 20 wide receivers are 30 or older. Rankings here are based on overall wide receivers. So Tyreek Hill, he's 30 years old. He's the fourth highest paid wide receiver, $30 million. Devontae Adams, 31. He's making $28 million. Cooper Kupp, he is seventh. He's 31, $26.7 million. Calvin Ridley, turning 30 in December, $23 million. Stephon Diggs, 30 years old, making $22.5 million a year. Mike Evans, turning 31 in August, making $20.5 million. Keenan Allen, $20.025. He is 32. Amari Cooper, 30 years old, just turned 30. $20 million. Only Hill and Evans had more receiving yards than Cooper last year on that list that we're looking at. Let's welcome in Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Jacob, when you look at that list, I see why Amari Cooper would like some guaranteed money and would like to be paid more. And the Browns are in a tough spot because they don't have much behind them that is proven.
Yeah, it's kind of like, a game of chicken. Who's going to blink first? Like, is Amari Cooper going to come down on the number he wants or the amount of years, or are the Browns going to go back up kind of into some of that stuff that he wants? But, you talked about that. Only a couple of guys on that list above him, over 30, had a better season than him last year. It's hard to argue that Amari Cooper in the last couple of years hasn't had played some of the best football of his entire career since he came here. Set career high in touchdowns last year, or his first year here, and then career high in yardage and yards per reception last year. Like you said, the most important thing there is there's no one behind him. And yes, I understand, you think 30 years old, you're starting to get up there. You don't pay for past production, you pay for what's coming up. But, the way he's kind of continued to get better and gone about his business and just been this reliable guy. He's going to be there. He's going to perform. There's other guys that are making more money than him that shouldn't be. You got to find some kind of middle point that you can agree on here, because you just can't do this without Amari Cooper. And I really doubt they don't find some kind of resolution to this.
Yeah, I would be surprised as well. And he wants some guaranteed money. And again, I get where he's at. And I think they'll find a way. I hope they'll find a way to get that done. So we've talked about this a little bit this week. Jack Conklin tweeted out that he is healthy and ready to go, that he is back and is ready to go for the season. You wrote an article that they should make him the swing tackle. Take us through that article.
It's been a little bit of time since he's played left tackle, but if you remember, that is what his position in college. He was a left tackle at Michigan State. Like my co-host Casey Kinnaman likes to point out, he just so happened to get drafted by a team that had a young guy named Taylor Lewan. So he wasn't really going to go over there and play left tackle. And in his first year, he switches over to right tackle and he becomes an all-pro as a rookie. So he hasn't really played left tackle since then. So I know maybe there's some worry that he can adjust back to that. But if you're thinking about your number 3 tackle who can play left side and right side, if that guy is Jack Conklin, I feel like you got to feel pretty good about that. He will turn 30 years old just before the season starts. In August, he'll be 30 years old. If he's healthy, and there's some big ifs there, because this is a guy that kind of predicates his game on his athleticism, his ability to move. He's not necessarily a big, nasty mauler type. So you do have some concerns about a couple of back-to-back knee injuries. He had a knee injury while he was with Tennessee as well. So some of those things you kind of worry about, but he's had a long time, to recoup here. You're talking about the injury happening in the first game of the season. So I don't want to see James Hudson as your swing tackle this year. I think I've seen enough of that experiment, and a guy that's an all-pro at right tackle. And then, if things go bad for Jett at left and they slide him over there and he kind of fills right back in, I just think that he's got the skill set. He's got the experience to play on both sides. You would probably want to see how he's doing in training camp on the left side, so see if he still feels good about that over there. But I just think you put yourself in a great position if Conklin is your number 3 guy that can play both sides. And you don't want to stunt the growth of DeJuan Jones, so you don't really want to put him back on the bench. I don't overly love that idea. And of the 3 tackles, he seems to be the healthiest. He's the only one we've seen in OTAs and minicamp. So I think everything put together, take some pressure off Conklin. Don't try to rush him back there to be a starter. Let him kind of be that number 3, really nice veteran leadership that can play on both sides, and just kind of put yourself in a really good position depth-wise at one of the most important positions on offense.
So this one's from the Bleacher Report. Along those lines, every NFL's most promising building block entering 2024. It's based on players that are on their rookie contracts. The Browns, they say DeJuan Jones. Jones started 9 games at right tackle, allowed a modest 3 sacks, according to PFF. Key piece of Cleveland's future up front. I'd also look at Martin Emerson on that list, but okay, either one of them. And the impressive thing is neither one of those guys are first-round picks. Neither one of them are second-round picks. Emerson a 3rd and Jones a 4th.
Yeah, the disrespect that Martin Emerson continues to seem to kind of get with these lists and these rankings, and it just baffles my mind because of what he's done. I mean, anytime you look at a guy and you say, hey, Martin Emerson allowed 0 touchdowns last year. And, he's got other – they're going after Martin Emerson more so than some other top corners because he's got, Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome on his team. So it's like, he's not exactly the number 1 that everybody just avoids. Like Martin Emerson he's not getting the easy way out to make these stats and do these numbers and put this stuff up. So it is surprising to me that Emerson's not on that list. But, DeJuan Jones, I think some of the highlight things that he did, like the TJ Watt play where he kind of buries TJ Watt, that kind of made it's kind of like a sexy sort of highlights type of thing that people love to talk about. And I think that kind of boosts him up because he's got some of those just nasty mauler that really, that gets the blood pumping kind of highlights from his rookie year. And I think so that kind of helps him there. But I will say the one thing about Martin, it goes both ways with Martin Emerson and DeJuan Jones about them being really key building blocks is like on the offensive line, the Browns have invested a ton of money. So you need some cheap options, some cheap starters down the road to kind of try to balance that out. Same at corner. I mean, they may have to pay Greg Newsome. I don't know if they will or not, but he's getting ready. His contract's coming up. You're already playing Denzel Ward. You're paying Grant Delpit and some other guys on the defense. So having those guys on rookie contracts, especially to balance those things out, and them vastly overplaying their draft position, it plays a big part into why the Browns are in the position they are to potentially win a lot of games.
So this one is from ESPN.com, ranking all 32 teams by talent under 25 years old. They go Texans 1, Lions 2, Ravens 3. They have the Browns 28th. Only the Eagles, Saints, Raiders, Dolphins behind them. There's a lot of youth that helped the Browns rank as one of the top NFL defensives last season. Greg Newsome, 24. Martin Emerson, 23. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, 24. The defense will also add second-round defensive tackle Mike Hall Jr., who's 21. Top young asset on offense, maybe a player who won't play much this year. DeJuan Jones started 9 games at tackle, 23, and a healthy Jack Conklin will put Jones back on the bench. Well, we'll see about that. That's to be determined. It's kind of interesting that that seems a little bit low just based on the guys that they named who are under 25. But I guess it is a team that's kind of ascending age-wise.
Yeah, that's not exactly the kind of paragraph you expect to read on a team that's in the bottom echelon of the rankings of whatever kind of article you're doing. So I had read that earlier in the day, and I thought that was kind of interesting. It kind of makes sense because of like the offensive line. I'm thinking about, the offensive line. Yeah, DeJuan Jones is young, but, you talked about, Jed getting older. Believe it or not, he's actually going into his 5th year, and you got veterans on the inside. But I think the wide receiver core is pretty young with Cedric Tillman and Jamari Thrash and David Bell. I'm pretty surprised that you would put the Browns down there, even with the offense not having quite as many younger players that you expect to be big pieces as what the defense does, because the defense is riddled with them, as you just kind of mentioned, and Mike Hall coming in at that age really helps on that side as well. And there's not as many of those guys on the offensive side of the ball. So I guess that kind of knocks them down. But you're talking about, to me, Martin Emerson's a top 15 corner in the NFL. Like, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a top 15 linebacker in the NFL. Like, just right there, you're talking about guys that are towards the top half of their position group that are on the defense in two very key positions. And Grant Delpit, I think, I can't remember how old Delpit might have been aged out in that situation, but you've got enough talent that I don't think 28 makes much sense based on how many key contributors are under 25 years old on one of the league's best defenses. I think that's important because they focused on the defense in that article. Well, focused on the fact that some of the biggest pieces that make the Browns defense so good are these young guys, and it's one of the best defenses. You kind of would think, I don't know, not in the 20s. I'd put them somewhere in the teens probably.
Yeah, and 25, with NIL and the like, players are going to start getting older. They're going to stay in college longer because they can make some money, without question. You wrote an article, and it was based on a poll. So let's take a look at the poll. Who will be second on the team in sacks in 2024? And this from BrownsWire.com. And it's behind Myles Garrett. You got Zadarius Smith getting 47% of the vote. Okoronkwo, 30%. Wright, Hall, other, and then Quentin Jefferson. So it's not surprising. I wouldn't be surprised if Okoronkwo has one of those years where he goes crazy. He was getting set to do that, and then he missed some time and was injured and tried to come back.
I think about Okoronkwo kind of the same reason why I put Michael Hall Jr. on that list, like kind of snuck him in there and some people got some votes for him. I think those two are primed in positions to get so many favorable matchups. And you talked about Okoronkwo was really coming on last year. You're right, until he gets that torn pec. And I still can't believe he battled through that and had some pretty good plays with that kind of gruesome injury the way he did. But you've got so many other established players. Myles Garrett's going to get all the attention that he always has gotten. Zadarius Smith is, you're talking about a guy, he only had 5.5 sacks last year, but 61 pressures. He was kind of more of didn't really fill up the stat sheet as much. It was just kind of, you watch him on tape, you can see him kind of creating issues with the quarterback. But you're going to pay a lot of attention to those guys. You're going to pay attention to Quentin Jefferson on the inside and Dalvin Tomlinson. And, when they slide Zadarius Smith on the outside and put Okoronkwo next to him, he's going to get one-on-one matchups. He's not going to get, double teamed in those situations. He's going to get the opportunity to just beat his guy one-on-one. And I think Michael Hall will get some of that attention as well when he's in there as a situational rusher. And in the end, I probably still lean Zadarius. I think that this poll is probably correct in the way I would have ranked them all. But at the same time, man, don't think it's crazy for Okoronkwo to actually hit the double-digit sack number that he kind of set himself for, especially if the other guys get the attention that they got last year.
Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com and the Barking Browns podcast. And outside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, some potential unsung heroes for the Browns in 2024. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Jacob Roach from BrownsWire.com, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. 5 potential unsung hero candidates for 2024. And here they are. This is an article that you wrote, Jacob. Cedric Tillman, wide receiver, defensive end Alex Wright, running back Naheem Hines, safety Rodney McLeod, and linebacker Jordan Hicks. Like all of them, could see all of them. Who do you... when you look at that, who do you think most likely is to be kind of the unsung hero?
I think I lean Cedric Tillman, and I keep doing this every year, falling in love with the young wide receiver that they get and overestimating the role they had. And I did that last year with Cedric Tillman, where you had a guy who struggled as a rookie. You know, there were some highlights, but there was a lot of lowlights and some issues with route running, and especially on those kind of option choice routes where he was running the wrong route. There's that very famous clip of Joe Flacco cursing after he ran what appeared to be the wrong route, and Flacco threw it where he thought he would have gone. But, you know, Tillman goes and plays in Tennessee in that really weird air raid vertical system where they just weren't asked to run more than like a quick slant, a post, and a go route. That's mostly what they ran there in Tennessee when he was there. So he came in, he had to really kind of learn the position, some of the more intricate parts of the position in the route running, and he just wasn't able to pick up on it in time. And I think, you know, now a year in that system, a year with Amari Cooper, and now even Jerry Jeudy, two of the better route runners in the NFL, I think Tillman brings something to the table that they don't have in the other bodies in the room. You know, they've got great route runners, they've got twitchy players, they've got guys with speed, but Tillman brings that size and physicality mixed with some good athleticism. He is a good athlete. So you're talking about that kind of blend that they can't get from anybody else. They now get from Cedric Tillman. And I think where you will see that kind of stuff is in the red zone. I think that he can be that kind of guy. He may only get 400 to 500 yards receiving and maybe 5 or 6 touchdowns, but those 5 or 6 touchdowns could make or break 2 or 3 games. You know, that kind of role is kind of where I'm at when I talk about the unsung hero portion of that. Is like, yeah, you know, if you're a Washington Commanders fan and you just look at the box score of Cedric Tillman this year, you're probably not going to be blown away and be like, oh, we should trade for that guy. But if you watch the games week in, week out as a Browns fan, you're going to see some key moments. And I think Cedric Tillman will step up and kind of be that kind of big-bodied, physical possession guy in the red zone and in some of those like 3rd and long, 4th and short situations where you just need a guy to go out and make a play. And I think ultimately Tillman will be that guy in a limited capacity, but I think he can be that guy behind, you know, Moore and Jeudy and Cooper and even David Njoku.
Yeah, I'm intrigued with Jordan Hicks. I think Hicks is a guy that he's going to allow Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to just run wild.
Yeah, and I think I put him on the list. It's kind of funny that I put him last on that list because I even said in the article that I don't think he's getting talked about enough. And even I put him at the bottom of the list while also saying I don't think he gets talked about enough. This is a guy that's 5 straight 100 tackle seasons. You can't balk at that. You can't laugh at that. That is production. That is exactly what you need him to be. I think he's a better, more athletic version of Anthony Walker. He's been in this system. He's played a lot of football, so he understands how to coach up some of these young guys, and he can go up there. And I think that they were looking for a guy that could play cleanup to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, because, you know, we've talked about this before where sometimes the play that JOK makes is he doesn't make the tackle in the backfield, but he forces that running back to stop or kind of, you know, hesitate and try to break back away. And then if you've got a linebacker with good sideline to sideline speed and a really quick processor like a guy like Jordan Hicks, you can then make that tackle for loss or make it for a 1 or 2 yard gain. And I just think you mentioned it, him pairing with JOK, I think that is very underrated. And I think the leadership that he can bring to this team can't be understated as well.
This is from CBS Sports, top 20 cornerbacks for the 2024 season. They go Sauce Gardner 1, Patrick Surtain 2, Jalen Ramsey, who I think was grandfathered in, is 3. They have Denzel Ward at 9, and then Martin Emerson and Greg Newsome, honorable mention. With Ward, hasn't yielded more than 44 catches in any of his 6 NFL seasons and has only given up a completion rate above 60% once. Overall, opponents have a 75.1 passer rating thrown in his direction. Might ding him because he's banged up and seems to miss 3, 4, 5 games a year. And I think Emerson not being in the top 20, I would disagree with that, and I'd say Newsome's kind of on the fringe of it as well.
And is any other team have two honorable mentions and a top 10 guy?
No. But I Emerson should be if you're going to tell me there's 20 cornerbacks you'd rather have than Martin Emerson, I'm probably going to argue that.
Yeah, we would probably have to throw hands if
Yeah.
we were in an alley.
Yeah.
Told me that, like, I would have to be like, listen here. I mean, you can't find guys that have the thing about Martin Emerson that I think truly makes him so special is his confidence. No matter who he's lining up against, it doesn't matter if it's a future Hall of Famer. It doesn't matter if it's a nobody who's having a big game. He's going to treat everybody the same way. He's not going to be intimidated by anybody, and he's not going to take plays off. I think that his confidence and his motor, I think, really are the best things about him. And, his physicality and athleticism, like, he's not a 4-2 guy, so he's not going to run stride for stride with Xavier Worthy, but he'll play with good cushion, doesn't get beat very very often on those vert routes. And, like, if you want to put a big physical tight end on him for whatever reason, that's fine. He's big, physical, athletics, quick. I just think that Emerson does literally everything, and he can cover any type of wide receiver. I know it might be a little bit spicy, a little bit controversy. I think by the end of this year that you're going to see Martin Emerson ahead of Denzel Ward. I think that's where this is going, because he has the size and the durability that Ward kind of doesn't have. And, you talked about it, Ward misses some time here and there. We haven't really seen that issue with Emerson. And, Ward sometimes has some tackling issues with the bigger, more physical players because he's just a little bit smaller. And Emerson doesn't have that. So to leave Emerson out of the top 20, again, I don't understand when the disrespect will end.
Yeah, I agree with you. Jacob Roach, BrownsWire.com, as always. Great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out, BrownsWire.com. He is also the co-host of the Barking Browns podcast. We're just upside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, guys. Just a great show, as always. Can JOK be our Steelers version of Troy Polamalu, only instead of from the safety position, from the linebacker position? Polamalu was a huge disruptor that had to be accounted for. Blew up plays near the line of scrimmage before they could even get going, making those Steeler defenses elite back in the day and Super Bowl winners. Is that something we want from JOK? Is that a role you see him playing going forward, and would that even fit into Jim Schwartz's system? Go Browns!
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, I would say not only JOK, I think you could say the same thing about Grant Delpit. Both of those guys are versatile enough and quick enough off the ball that you put them on the line of scrimmage, they're going to create some havoc. And you know what? Jim Schwartz is going to sit there like this and smile when they do.
Yeah, we saw a lot of that a year ago because what we've seen with JOK and Grant Delpit, I mean, we've talked plenty of times how I think they're great players when they play downhill, and they really are great fits for a Jim Schwartz scheme that thrives on aggressiveness, that thrives on creating chaos in the backfield. And when you have players that fit that system and fit that mentality, that's really what could take a defense to the next level. If you're asking if they could be like Troy Polamalu, that's a high bar to clear. Troy Polamalu might be one of the best absolute playmaking safeties and probably one of the best defensive playmakers we've seen this century. I mean, I don't know if we're ever going to see another guy, at least not anytime soon, that anticipated the snap count like he has at least 2 or 3 different times, jumping over the line of scrimmage to blow up running plays. I mean, I just don't think that's something we may ever see again. But if you're talking just from a pure disruptive presence, the ability to get downhill and make plays in the backfield, certainly they have a chance to get close, and certainly we saw a lot of that from JOK, a worthwhile steal for the Browns back in 2021, and I think he's got a chance to get even better as he gets older.
Yeah, the other thing is that tight man coverage allows them to be disruptive at the line of scrimmage. It kind of is what Jim Schwartz's defense is. This one's from the NFL Spin Zone. Every NFL team's worst case scenario for 2024. For the Browns, they win 6 or 7 wins. Deshaun Watson misses 8+ games. Even if you think they overachieved last year, losing 8 or 9 games this season would be a horrendous regression for Cleveland. Losing more than that and not having Watson, yikes. I got to be honest. I think they could win 10, 11 games with Jameis Winston.
Yeah, I mean, again, PJ Walker won 2 games as a starter, including the game. Well, I mean, he didn't start the Colts game, but he played the vast majority of those snaps against the Colts and ended up winning. He started and finished the win against the 49ers, and then Dorian Thompson-Robinson beat the Steelers. That's already 3. And Jameis Winston should be a much better pro quarterback, and he is much better than either of those guys. So I just feel like with the talent on this roster, something very, very wrong would have had to happen for this team to win just 6 or 7 games. They win, I feel like 8 might be their floor, certainly, if they have as many injury problems they did a year ago. But with the Browns, I think, again, Deshaun Watson's got to find a way to stay healthy. He simply has to. This is 3rd year of his contract. He's only played in 11 and a quarter games over the course of 2 seasons. He's just got to find a way to stay on the field. And, you know, if he doesn't, that becomes a concern that this becomes an issue where he's obviously coming off season-ending shoulder surgery. If he has another injury, and that just becomes worrisome. So the Browns and Watson got to figure a way to keep him upright as much as possible all season.
This is from the 33rdteam.com. So those are former NFL scouts, executive types, top backup quarterbacks who could become starters. They say Jameis Winston. Watson returning from serious shoulder injury, and there's no telling what he'll look like this year. Winston has been league average starter for most of his career, but he's been blocked in New Orleans by the likes of Drew Brees, Derek Carr. This might be the best situation to return to the field and resurrect his career. I think this is probably the best roster that he has played with, the best offensive line, the best wide receivers. Some of the teams in Tampa that he played on were good. I don't think they were this good.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Browns don't quite have a Mike Evans at receiver in his prime, but, you know, outside of that, I think you have to feel like Jameis Winston would have a strong cast around him if he ever had to start long term. Obviously, Amari Cooper, we've seen what he's done the past 2 seasons. I think Jerry Jeudy's going to play very well. We saw flashes out of Elijah Moore. David Njoku finally had his Pro Bowl season a year ago, not to mention the offensive line. I know there's questions about who's going to start at tackle, but just the consistency of that play, especially from the interior, where quarterbacks never want to face pressure at the interior. The fact that those guys have been there for a long time and continue to remain steady and solid, I think that's got to be a good place for Jameis Winston to feel comfortable. And of course, we saw what Kevin Stefanski was able to do last year, again, having to start 5 different quarterbacks. He won with 4 different starting quarterbacks, had Joe Flacco take this team all the way to the playoffs at the end of the season. I mean, I don't think there's any question that the Browns have plenty on offense as far as talent. Kevin Stefanski certainly proven himself as one of the better young coaches in the NFL. It's certainly not a bad situation if Deshaun Watson is hurt and then Jameis Winston has to start a handful of games, because Winston, of course, is a pro. He's been around the block a few times. He understands how the game is played. And I think, yeah, I would agree with them that certainly if he has to start, the Browns could still play very well.
Yeah, I think about it. You know, Jacoby Brissett had arguably his best year with Kevin Stefanski. Kirk Cousins has had his best year. Baker Mayfield had his best year with Kevin. There are a number of quarterbacks who have had their best years with Kevin Stefanski. So I would think Jameis Winston would have a good year if they had to rely on him. This is from Warren Sharp Football. Highest rate of incompletions due to receiver error. Number 1 was Jacksonville at 22%, Rams and Titans 21%, Ravens, Texans, and Chiefs at 20%, tied for 7th, Raiders, Seahawks, Vikings, Lions, Bills 19%, and the Browns tied for 12th, Cowboys, Chargers, and the Browns at 18%. So still, that 18% incompletion percentage because of receiver errors, it's not exactly what you're looking for.
Yeah, not at all. And I mean, that's why you go out and trade for a Jerry Jeudy. That's why you draft a Jamari Thrash to kind of add more depth and competition at receiver. And when you look at this depth chart, obviously Amari Cooper, we still got to see what happens with him in his holdout situation. Elijah Moore heading into last year of his rookie deal, I would imagine he's going to want to try and have a big season. Cedric Tillman, we talked about last week, I think has got a good chance to really have a jump in year two after flashing a little as a rookie, maybe not as much as everybody expected, but the talent on this in this receiving core is clear. I think part of the issue last year also is the fact that, trying to catch the ball from so many different quarterbacks, it takes time to adjust. I mean, going from Deshaun Watson to DTR to PJ Walker back to DTR and then to Joe Flacco is certainly an adjustment. So you can understand in that case when you don't have consistency at starting quarterback why you would have some issues at receiver. But at the same time, there's more talent at receiver right now. There should be competition, and that's the kind of thing that gets guys to play better. So we'll see how that all translates, especially in a new offensive system with Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
Moneymaker from the Ohio Lottery has no interest in beating around the bush. Money Maker. You play the game, you could win money. Up to $2 million. With more than $88 million in prizes from $50 to $500. Moneymaker cuts right to the cash. Unlike this guy.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hello, my name is Anthony, and I love your show. I listen to it every day at work. It's a great show. But my thing is, I'm excited for this year. Should I be overexcited for this year because of the past couple of years? I mean, are our expectations too high for the Browns? Hey, love your show. Keep doing what you're doing. Be safe. Thank you. Go Browns. Woof, woof.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Tim, no, the expectation should be high. You go out and you trade what you traded to get Deshaun Watson, and you get the roster that you got because you expect to win. And they expect to win, so expectations should be high.
Yeah, I think fans should certainly at the least feel cautiously optimistic that the team is going to be in a similar place to a year ago. And that's especially coming off a year where I think they had unprecedented injury issues at quarterback and then at running back, of course, with Nick Chubb going down in week 2 of the season, having to go into your 4th and 5th offensive tackles. I could go on and on about the rash of injuries, but it felt historic, and it feels like it would be very, I guess, unlikely, for lack of a better term, that it would happen again. So certainly because of the talent on the roster, because most of these guys have played together for a full season. You got Jim Schwartz going into his 2nd season as defensive coordinator. If Deshaun Watson is healthier than he was a year ago, there's no reason to think that 11 wins or more again isn't going to be possible. Certainly that should be the bar if Deshaun Watson is healthy and he could play. If he's able to get back to that Houston level, especially from 2019, 2020, then you could really start to think potentially about the division title. The hindrance, of course, is you're going up against a really good quarterback schedule, including, Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, just to name a few of the strong quarterbacks they're going to have to face. So the defense is going to be tested, I think, more than a year ago. That said, there's a lot of talent on this roster, and they already proved that they can handle a lot of adversity and still have a very strong season. So we'll see how that carries over into 2024. But I think fans should be pretty optimistic to a good degree about this team and have high expectations for them. I think this is a very good football team.
Yeah, and you know what? I think the Browns have high expectations for themselves. That's probably more important than anything. They should expect to be there and be competitive for that. This from Dog Pound Daily. 3 Browns players who could be traded ahead of training camp. They say Jerome Ford, when Nick Chubb was injured in week 2 against Pittsburgh Steelers, Ford pushed into the starting role. 12 yards, 8 rushing attempts in week 1. Number 2 back had 36 yards, 15 attempts. Number 2, they say Maurice Hurst defensive tackle, quick to sign veteran players on one-year deals, prove they have what it takes to succeed in the NFL. So they did take Michael Hall Jr., so that's kind of the rationale there. Number 1, Elijah Moore. Ahead of the 2023 season, sent the 42nd overall pick. They did a pick swap in exchange for Moore in the 74th pick. Moore was taken in the second round at 34 and has not lived up to the potential, is kind of the rationale there. I don't think there's any way they're trading Jerome Ford. I would be surprised if they traded Maurice Hurst or Elijah Moore. I don't think they're trading any of those guys. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no reason to. Jerome Ford, I mean, right now, I'd put him as RB1 right now until Nick Chubb's 100%. Yeah, there were inconsistencies, I think, with Jerome Ford's game, that he was too much a boomer bust, but at the very minimum, you see a guy who's capable of making big plays and could especially be a threat out of the backfield as a receiver, which is a nice thing to have for the Browns. So certainly I would hang on to him, especially because they really didn't do much. They didn't do anything in the draft that got him. I know they got a couple of veterans in Deontay Foreman and Nyheim Hines to help out with depth. We'll see how that all translates. Maurice Hurst, I don't know. He's had a lot of injuries, so I doubt he would have a lot of value. Obviously, I think he played well for the Browns prior to his injury last season. And with Mike Hall Jr., I get that maybe you want to get him on the field, but I think with defensive tackle, you want to protect him a little bit and really put him in advantageous situations till he gets stronger and understands all the nuances of playing defensive tackle in the NFL. And going to number 1 with Elijah Moore, yeah, I don't see that, especially considering he's in a contract year that his best year was last year when he had about 600 some yards and I think only 2 touchdowns. I think it said he's solid. I don't know how high his ceiling is, and if you're a team, why would you want to trade for him now when you could probably get him, in free agency potentially for maybe 10, $11 million, and he could be a solid 2 or 3 at that rate. I think if you're the Browns, you're probably smart just to hold on to Elijah Moore and see if you can get some compensatory pick value for Elijah Moore, because I think there's more value right now in keeping him than there would be in trading him.
All right, so I think we both agree biggest key to success for the Browns is going to be Deshaun Watson in 2024, him playing well. Other than that, who do you think so not including Deshaun Watson rather, who is the most important guy to the Browns' success in 2024?
I think I might kind of cheat and go with a couple guys. I think it's the complementary edge rushers around Myles Garrett. Obviously, we know what Myles Garrett's going to be. He was the reigning NFL Defensive Player of the Year for a reason, because he just creates so much havoc and draws so much attention to himself because of just how devastating he can be off the edge. It's on the rest of the defensive line to kind of follow suit around him. I know Zadarius Smith, he had a lot of pressures, wasn't able to translate that into sacks. Okoronkwo was a little banged up last season, but still, I thought played pretty well. Alex Wright had that breakout at the second half of the season where you really see why the Browns made him a 3rd-round pick in 2022, because he has such incredible athletic tools. I think those 3 guys are going to be such an X factor because, again, like I said earlier, with these quarterbacks you're playing in 2024, you got to be able to get pressure and consistent pressure. And especially in those 3rd and long situations where a quarterback can't just get rid of the ball in 2 seconds, where you have to be able to generate pressure, especially with just 4 guys at times, those guys around Garrett need to continue to ramp up the pressure, continue to get pressures, and maybe turn more of those pressures into sacks and really try to eventually take some pressure off Myles Garrett, where he doesn't have to do really everything by himself, and where teams will pay more for double or triple teaming Myles Garrett and then leaving everybody else in a one-on-one.
All right, before I let you go, I know you wrote an article. So Donovan Mitchell signed a contract extension, 3 years, $150.3 million. And you kind of were comparing it to the richest sports contracts in Cleveland sports history. So you see Watson at 5 years, $230. Garland, 5 years, $197.2. Then you got Mitchell. Then Myles Garrett, 5 years, $125 million. It's kind of interesting. The NBA it's $50 million a year. So average value, Donovan Mitchell's is the highest.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way the NBA has kind of gone with the way the cap has spiked over and over again. And you would expect it's going to continue to do that depending on whatever happens with the new television deals over the next few years. And as we kind of go further down that list, it took me a while to do some of this research. I found it fascinating that Kevin Love appears on this list not once, but twice in a row because he signed $200+ million contracts when he was with the Cavs. The fact that Sean Kemp, who signed his contract, I believe it was in 1997 for $107 million, he's still in the top 10. And that's in 1997 money. So it's hard to kind of imagine what that money would be nowadays. But it just kind of goes to show you it's not just the cap in the NBA that's high, but because you only have 15 players on a roster, the value of star players and the value of having those guys on the roster, they're naturally going to get more per year than everybody else because in the NFL, you have to distribute that cap among 53 players. In baseball, there's no cap, but, they did that sometimes it's not always easy to get those big giant paydays as a player. In hockey, it's a lower cap and you're spreading across, 20 plus players. So in basketball, it's players have more average share, I think, of the cap per player. So that's where you see those higher salaries, or as I like to call it, average salaries, or the other technical term is AAV, average annual value. That's why you see it so much higher for those guys. It's just player percentage of the cap in each league.
Yeah, without question, that is definitely interesting. And your point about 12 players, 15 players in the NBA is very valid. Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a nice holiday tomorrow.
You as well. Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out, cleveland.com, as well as the pages of the Plain Dealer are always really good stuff. We're going to turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Ethan Sands, Cavs beat reporter from Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. Sports4CLE continues. We turn our attention to the Cavaliers. Big week for the Cavs. A new head coach in Kenny Atkinson, an extension for Donovan Mitchell. And today, word comes out that first-round pick Jalen Tyson has officially signed his contract and is ready to go. Let's welcome in Ethan Sands. He is Cavs beat reporter for cleveland.com. Ethan, appreciate you joining us. I know you wrote an article, what we need to know about Cavs first-round pick Jalen Tyson. He had his introductory press conference this week and all. Take us through that article and just kind of your impressions of Tyson.
Yeah, Jalen Tyson is a guy that is ready to get onto the scene as soon as he steps into the Cavs facility. He's someone who has a lot of confidence. He came into his introductory press conference saying that he wanted to earn a roster and a rotational spot with the Cavs, and also he said that he wants to make an all-defensive team his first year in the league. That's a big expectation for him, and it's something that you can look for because he knows that he was an offensive guy when he came out of Cal. He averaged nearly 20 points in his junior season, and he also was able to become an all-Pac-12 first-team player because of his contributions. But the thing that he knows that he can work on most is his defense. And him being able to notice that and say that he wants to focus on that in his first season shows that he is a guy that is willing to do whatever it takes to get on the floor and help the Cavs team win.
When you look at it, what do you think he brings the Cavs that what is it about him that kind of grabbed Kobe Altman and the front offices and said, yeah, that's the guy we need at 20?
He's a guy that's a wing. He's 6'6", 6'7" with shoes on. He's long. He can play defense when he needs to. He can score, create on his own, but he can also shoot from beyond the arc. He's a guy that can create his own shot, whether it's in the paint, from beyond, and it's someone that you need to understand when it comes to being able to space the floor alongside Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. That's what the Cavs were looking for. Not to mention that Jalen Tyson came into his workout with the Cavs not at 100%, but made sure that he knew that he was going to be able to go and that he was able to showcase, even in one of the best workouts that they said that they had, that he was one of the top players, even not at 100%. And it wasn't always the scoring, like we mentioned. It was the rebounding, it was the passing, it was setting up and making the people around him better in a 3-on-3 style workout. And that stood out to Kobe Altman, to Kenny Atkinson, to the guys in the front office to make that pick at number 20 with Jalen Tyson.
So let's turn our attention to Donovan Mitchell. Signs an extension, 3 years, 2 years player option, so 3 years. You wrote an article, Cavs are confident in reaching new heights with Donovan Mitchell leading the way, in spite of some of the Eastern Conference teams have gotten significantly better as well. Take us through that article and kind of your thought process through that.
Yeah, I mean, originally you look at free agency, you look at the trade market and things that are going on around the league. Like you mentioned, teams around the Eastern Conference are getting better. The Philadelphia 76ers got better. The Orlando Magic got better. So there was a question point blank asked to Kenny Atkinson about Donovan Mitchell, asking if Evan Mobley needs to be the best guy on the team for the Cavs to get to where they want to go, which is the Eastern Conference Finals and the NBA Finals, or if they can do it with Donovan Mitchell. And point blank, Kenny Atkinson said that we can do it with Donovan Mitchell. And that's the confidence that not only Kenny Atkinson, who's the new head coach for the Cavs, had, but also that Kobe Altman has had, and that this entire roster has, because we know as of right now, it's his team. And Donovan Mitchell, the extension goes on to the end of the contract that he had that would have ended this next year. So it's basically 3 years and then a player option. So you understand that you have 3 years, then he's going to make a decision. And we know that the Cavs need to win in that time to make it be feasible and make it look presentable for Donovan Mitchell to want to extend once again with the Cavaliers.
The other thing is that, you know, that time frame gives him the ability, after he gets 10 years in, he can get even more money with an extension. So the timing of the player option is to, one, make sure the Cavs continue to upgrade the roster, but two, gives him the ability to maximize his earning potential. If you're a player, it's smart.
It's an incredibly smart move, especially because you know of the 10-year threshold where you have a guy like Donovan Mitchell who will be reaching that at the 3rd year of this contract and then going into a player option. So it not only, like you said, gives the Cavs the opportunity to show him that this is the organization, this is the team that can win and get him to the Eastern Conference Finals and NBA Finals, which is what Donovan Mitchell's goal has been since entering this team and this organization. But you also think about when it looks at the landscape of the league, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have gotten lucrative deals that have made them the most highest paid players in the NBA. Donovan Mitchell's potential next contract could make him even more than that. So when you think about that and how it can impact the Cavs, it's a good move for not only for Donovan Mitchell, but also for the Cavs as well.
So we heard from Kenny Atkinson this week as well. What did you think after listening to him a bit and his vision?
I think he's the guy for the job for this team. He is a great fit. And the way that he got acclimated as soon as he got the job, right? He was in France with the French national team, took a flight, took a call from Kobe Altman during practice to take this job, then flew back to be in the war room to draft Jalen Tyson, then went to Los Angeles to meet up with Donovan Mitchell and participate in the Spider Elite Camp, which he also got to meet Evan Mobley, Isaiah Mobley, who are also on this team. And then he came back to do his introductory press conference in Cleveland. He has gotten started and gotten on a roll, but you also realize that he has the potential and also the resume to get the job done when it comes to player development with Evan Mobley and Darius Garland. But you also know that he has been an assistant coach under some of the best coaches in the NBA. When he was a former head coach at Brooklyn with the Brooklyn Nets, he said that he had maybe like a bachelor's degree. But when he went and learned under coaches like Steve Kerr and Tyronn Lue, those guys helped him get an MBA in the game of basketball. So now he's at a different level. He even turned down an opportunity in 2022 to head coach the Charlotte Hornets because he didn't feel like it was the right opportunity or the right time. And now, with a winning team in the Cleveland Cavaliers, he has an opportunity to help this team go from good to great. And he's already getting endorsements not only from the players, but from players around the league. Players on the Golden State Warriors like Draymond Green and others reached out to players and executives of the Cleveland Cavaliers to reach out and say how good of a decision it was to go and get Kenny Atkinson, because he's been around and he's seen and learned how to deal with star players like Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, you name it. Those different guys have endorsed Kenny Atkinson and have helped him grow and get to this opportunity. So with guys like Donovan Mitchell in the core four, I think this is the greatest guy they could have got to take them to the next level, especially when it comes to player development.
It certainly seems, just in listening to Kenny Atkinson, he has an idea. He won't necessarily give it away just yet. He has an idea of how to make these guys fit together. Did you get that sense just in listening to him? And you think about the way Golden State played, and he made mention of that. I can see some things that might work.
100%. I mean, you learn and you listen to what he talks about running in space, getting active early on in transition, shooting threes. And that's something that the Cavs began doing at the end of last season that showcased itself and showed that they could get their way to the Eastern Conference semifinals for the first time without LeBron James since 1993, right? So this is now a guy who has been around teams that have had two non-shooting bigs in Kevon Looney and Draymond Green, and he's been able to figure out a way to get those guys still acclimated into the offense, but also helping the guys around them be successful. Sure, it helps when you have shooters like Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson, but the Cavs have guys that can shoot at a high clip as well, with Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Max Strus and other guys, especially on the bench. That's the other thing that he mentioned, is that he's going to have a longer list of players that are going to get opportunities this season than someone like J.B. Bickerstaff had this past year. He's going to go into the bench and see what works and see what rotations work best for this team, and going forward, that's going to allow people to not only get into a better rhythm when it comes to getting into the playoffs, but it's going to give them an opportunity to see where they fit into this team and the dynamic of the offense that he's going to run.
All right, before I let you go, what moves do you think the Cavs can make this offseason? Trade, free agent, be it? Are there any that you see that they might go out and make?
The Cavs are really confident about this core four group, right? So the free agent market is kind of weak right now. They don't necessarily have a whole lot of options to fill the roles that they're looking at, which is more of a two-way wing. But when you look at the trade options, you can get better around the margins with guys. And I've heard them talking about trading guys like George Niang, Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade. Those have been conversations that they're having to see where they can get better around the margins. Is there a certain guy that I feel like the Cavs can go get and will automatically take the next step to the next level? Not in this market right now, but I think that this is a team that is trying to get better in every aspect and around the margins, but they are so not willing to stay away from getting rid of anybody in the core four. But it feels like if they were getting an offer that is really, really enticing, they would take a listen, but it would take a lot.
Ethan Sands, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Ethan.
Thank you for having me on.
Ethan Sands, make sure you check him out. Cavs beat reporter for cleveland.com. Always really good Cavs stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we're talking Guardians. We'll hear from Chris Antonetti. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Try C, where futures begin.
We turn our attention to the Cleveland Guardians, one of the best records in the major leagues and the best record in the American League. Couple weekend series against the White Sox, finishing it up. Chris Antonetti talked about the starting rotation. This from the show podcast.
First, going back to the rotation, we need to be better. That's clearly the area of the team where we've historically had some consistency, and it's been a big driver of our success in the past. But this year, it's an area that it's been inconsistent. And for us to have a successful second half of the season and find our way into the postseason, we know we need more consistency from our starting rotation. Because up to this point, we've largely relied on our bullpen, which has been outstanding. And then, our offense, or actually our position player team, both offensively and defensively, has done a really good job. So, we need to continue to score runs, continue to play good defense. If our bullpen can continue to perform at a really good rate, that'll be helpful for us, but we know we can't continue to rely so heavily on the bullpen without getting more consistency from the rotation.
And really, Gavin Williams will make a start tonight. So that's his first big league start. He's coming back from an injury. They have Matthew Boyd, who will throw a bullpen. He's going to take probably a month to ramp up because he has not pitched. He's coming off Tommy John surgery. Down in the minors, Joey Cantillo, again, a young guy, would be making his major league debut. He had a pretty significant hamstring injury, so he's kind of building back up. The options internally are not what they normally are for the Guardians. So that means the trade market. Along those lines, Steve Adams, MLB Trade Rumor Chat, was asked if he thought the Guardians would make a trade for a starting pitcher given the struggles they've had with Carrasco and McKenzie. Logan Allen's ERA is high. His response, yeah, I think they'll be involved in that market. It isn't super sexy, but when I was trying to find a thought for someone that would be a good fit for a Jose Quintana swap, who is with the Mets, assuming the Mets are indeed mulling dealing from their rotation to fill other needs, something like Quintana for Scott Barlow, add a few pieces on either side to help balance things out, seems like a decent framework. Expensive reliever for expensive back-end starter. Both might help each other team more than on their current roster. It's just a speculative scenario from Adams, but in his mind, there's some sense to it. And you know what? That does absolutely make sense. Getting a starting pitcher, everybody needs starting pitching. We go back to what we've been saying all week long. 59 pitchers in the American League are on the 60-day injured list. That's almost 4. It's one short of 4 per team on average. So starting pitching definitely going to be expensive to get. Chris Antonetti realizes that. Again, this from the show podcast, talking about the starting pitching market coming up, leading up to this trade deadline.
I'm not sure they're necessarily directly connected, Joel. I mean, I think you know how we have to operate. We have to be mindful of the opportunities we have each year to get to the postseason. And I think our track record shows the years in which we are competitive around the deadline, we try to improve. Now, that's not always possible, but if you go back to as far back as 2011 and 2016, 17, 18, 19, like we added players around the trade deadline when we were in competitive positions. I think we'll take that general mindset this year going into the deadline, but I'm not sure whether or not we'll be able to find that right fit where we can bring in talent at a cost that we think is justified. Because as important as this year is for us, one of the things we want to make sure we're doing is finding a way to sustain our competitiveness moving forward and not mortgage too much of the future for one opportunity that we have in front of us. And I think, you guys highlighted earlier that mindset and mentality has been instrumental in us maintaining success in a small market over the last decade plus.
Again, the trade market is going to be a tough one, and there are going to be teams like the Baltimore Orioles and the New York Yankees. Orioles farm system's loaded. They're going to need starting pitching, so are the Yankees. Along those lines, this is from The Athletic. So these would be MLB trade targets for each team. For the Guardians, position players, the position targets, starting pitching, corner, outfield, power bat. So the starting pitchers, they say Garrett Crochet, that's a guy from the White Sox, young guy. We'll get more on him in a little bit. Jack Flaherty from the Tigers. Luis Severino, that's another guy with the Mets. Eric Fedde, who will pitch tonight against Gavin Williams. Chris Bassett from the Toronto Blue Jays, who actually went to the University of Akron, too, so ties locally. Outfield, you got Luis Robert Jr., White Sox in town. Taylor Ward, Jesus Sanchez, Randy Arozarena, Michael Conforto, Brent Rooker of the A's, and Kjerstad from the Baltimore Orioles. When I look at Crochet, let's go to this. So the Athletic, a trade you would like to see the Guardians make. And they say they'd like the Guardians to trade Ralphie Velasquez, Gavin Williams, and Alex Clemmie. So those are two guys that are in A-ball and Clemmie to the White Sox for Garrett Crochet. Now, he's got a lot of Crochet is a guy that has a lot of team control left. But the problem with him is he's never started a game before this season. He's already pitched 101 innings this year. The most he had ever pitched before this season was 65. That was at Tennessee, as in the University of Tennessee in 2019 when he was in college. I would pass on giving up Gavin Williams. Again, he's left-handed. I know he throws hard. He's a good pitcher. I just would not do that. Based on that. All right. We've talked a little bit just about one of the things that has been really good for the Guardians this year has been their power numbers increasing. Chris Antonetti talked about that in a roundabout way with the development of Stephen Kwan and what he's seen from Kwan this year.
Yeah, he's one of the guys that we talked about, Joel, as we talked about that continued maturation and evolution of some of the guys that we have on our team. Steven's a great example of that. I think he's starting to get comfortable at the major league level and appreciates the skills that he has. He has this uncanny ability to put the bat on the ball and put the ball in play. So what we partnered with Steven on is talking about, like, that skill is an incredible skill to have. So you should therefore not necessarily be concerned about getting to 2 strikes, because if you get to 2 strikes, you can still find a way to put the ball in play. What there's an opportunity for is earlier in the count or in advantage counts, let's look to be a little bit more aggressive and look to just drive balls a little bit more instead of just putting the balls in play. And that theme has been consistent and something that our coaches have talked about, not just with Steven, but a number of players on our roster going back to the end of last year through the offseason in spring training. And I think Steven's a great example of seeing that approach pay off.
And you know, the thing is, David Fry has really kind of developed. Naylor has more home runs than he has at this point. So they've done a nice job and need to continue to do that, just based on the way the starting pitching has been. All right, for the first time in franchise history, the Guardians will have the first pick overall in the Major League Baseball draft. That's less than 2 weeks away, a week from Sunday. Chris Antonetti on his philosophy and the organization's philosophy of drafting number 1 overall.
We have not only the first pick, but the largest draft pool in history. So our responsibility and our goal as an organization is to use this opportunity to bring in the most talent we can. And so how do we take the resources and the draft capital that's available to us and bring in the most talented group? And there's a lot of different strategies that could go into figuring out how to do that. And so I do think there are a lot of good players at the top of the draft, and we feel fortunate to have the first selection. But how we parse through that, like I said, when I mentioned earlier, it might come down to the last few minutes, because a big part of that for us will be how do we think about not only the number 1 pick, but the totality of the draft pool to get the best return for our group.
You know, I think the Guardians front office and Chris Antonetti are among the best in baseball, but you have the opportunity to pick, you have your entire pick of the draft. And I get this is not what you normally do. You normally pick guys that you think you can develop. When you have the first pick in the draft and you've been searching for, you know, a guy to hit in the middle of the lineup, I think you take the guy that you think has the best chance to hit the highest ceiling and you draft that guy number 1 overall, because you may not have the opportunity to do that again. You haven't had it before in franchise history. They've drafted second in the draft only 5 times, never drafted number 1 overall. If you don't swing for the fences, you're not going to hit a home run. And this is a chance to hit a home run and not necessarily go for the solid single. You've been going for the solid single and you've had decent results. Swing big. If you miss, you miss. But at least you went and you swang for it. So hopefully Guardians swing big and take a guy with a high upside. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. No shows tomorrow or Friday because of the 4th of July holiday. So enjoy the holiday, be safe, and we will see you Monday on Sports for CLE. Have a great 4th of July weekend. See you Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.